Wizards of the Coast just announced a brand new secret lair, and I gotta say, my friends, this one is for the birds. Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We have an interesting secret lair to talk about. Actually, for real, we have a ton of interesting secret lairs to talk about. I predicted this in the live stream when they had already dropped multiple secret lairs that we were going to get more throughout the course of the day, and here I am getting messages right before I started the video. Yo, here's another secret lair. So I'm going to be doing videos on each of the individual secret lairs. This one here first is the bird focused secret lair. Now bear in mind, secret lairs are products that are designed to be different, irregular from normal or regular magic products, right? So you've got things like your crazy Godzilla lands where, look at me, I'm Godzilla hanging out on the mountain, you know, you got that sort of thing. Or they'll do like crazy 8-bit graphic things on Serum Visions. They've done all kinds of weird concepts. And that's one of the things I really like about Secret Lair. And this one is in one way mundane, but that's kind of what makes it special. Because what they're doing is they're turning like magic cards into regular world like bird cards. Basically birds you could theoretically see out in the wilds, at least to a degree. And so this video is going to be done from the perspective that we are the multiverse ornithology. You know what, man? I could say it before this. I could say it before I started recording. Ornithological. There we go. The Multiverse Ornithological Society, okay? So, what does that mean? It means we're bird watchers. We're gonna go and look at the different variations of birds, and we're gonna talk about how many copies of each of these cards have been printed through the different sets, the first plane they showed up on, that sort of thing, because I thought that would be a fun approach. So, that stands for MOS, by the way. And we're going to talk the most about birds. Oh, Lord. Unsubscribe. Hit the thumbs down. Unsubscribe. My channel is terrible. Let us dive into the first card we're going to talk about, Birds of Paradise. And it makes perfect sense for this to be the first card we're talking about, because this is the first bird of magic and the gold standard of what mana-producing creatures can be. 1 green nets you a 0/1 flyer that taps to add 1 mana of any color. Imagine how much of an impact that would have on standard. Look at cards like Gilded Goose, right? This is a card that can just go off every turn with absolutely no requirements. The flavor text on this printing of it says, "A single vivid feather fetches a royal price, but who, having seen these magnificent creations of nature, would settle for a feather?" I like this. I like this concept very much of the, like, if you look at the artwork, it looks like we're kind of looking through binoculars, right? And we're catching this bird in its natural habitat. Now, the Birds of Paradise tend to have big, flashy artwork. The Ravnica Block 1 was a great example of, like, some really, check me out. They've got a peacockish kind of vibe to them, right? And that makes sense with the whole Bird of Paradise concept. Now, Bird of Paradise, we have seen this bird 16 times previously. The original plane that we find it on is Dominaria, and that's established all the way back in like Alpha, basically, right? So Birds of Paradise is like, as I said, it's the gold standard of mana producers. Funnily enough, the original artwork for Birds of Paradise was supposed to be the artwork for a land card, but the bird in the artwork featured too prominently. And so as a result, they were like, okay, you know what? We'll just make a card for this. So Birds of Paradise wasn't meant to exist. It was created as an afterthought based on the artwork and led to such an iconic card. If you didn't play with birds like back in the day, you don't understand just how important and prevalent this card was. There's an expression, bolt the birds. And that's because you always get rid of your opponent's first turn Birds of Paradise. Back in the day, people didn't understand tempo to the same degree they do now. It seems like there's a lot of things that are way more obvious about Magic, but the reason that they feel way more obvious is because they're built off the knowledge of the forefathers, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, we build up our knowledge as we go along. So these things feel like they're self-evident, but really it's a journey of discovery. It's one of the many things that I love about Magic the Gathering. But either way, Birds of Paradise is an excellent include for this, and I really enjoy the like plum-colored plumage. I don't know, the purple and green, it's those are normally like supervillain colors in comic books, but it just works really well in this artwork. And it really does feel like we're just kind of gazing at it while it has no idea it's being studied. I really dig the concept of this secret lair, and it's something I actually wouldn't have expected from Wizards. Let's move on to the next card, and that is Swan Song. This is 1 blue for an instant that counters target enchantment, instant, or sorcery spell. Its controller creates a 2/2 blue bird creature token with flying. The flavor text says, the gracefulness of their flight makes one wonder whether nature or indeed a rare sort of magic lifts their wings. So this is a swan that's been created by magic. Now, normally when you see beasts that are created by magic, they will do something to make them feel special. You know what I mean? Like Wizards of the Coast and Magic overall has moved away from having regular real world animals in the game. That's why we went from having grizzly bears to rune claw bears. They're essentially the same thing. Grizzly bear and rune claw bears are the exact same thing. They're vanilla 2/2s for a green and 1 that are summoned bears. But in the artwork for rune claw bears, you notice that they have these like runes etched into them, whatever, and it makes them feel more mystical. And yes, a grizzly bear does work just fine, but it does feel mundane and real world. So I enjoy normally now that Wizards takes what would be a real world creature and adds something to make it a little more mystified, a little more magic. Normally, if you were going to create a swan, like look at the artwork on the other Swan Song. You can see that it's got way more of a distinctive magic feel to it, right? Where it's like, okay, like you can see this, there's something going on here. That's not a regular swan. That is some crazy magical, you're a wizard, Harry, kind of swan. So to see this swan just, I don't know, man, the swan's got attitude. You look at it, like it looks like he's like, come at me, bro. I'm gonna counter your stuff, bro. This swan embodies the spirit of the blue mage who countered the spell. It's like, nah. So you end up countering their spell. They get a swan, but then the swan has a snotty attitude. But yeah, again, this is another one where it seems like you and me, we're crouched down out in the marshes right now, looking at this majestic swan. It's like, ooh, look at that long neck. Look at the curve of that neck. Look at the stillness of the water around him. Because they went to the effort to mystify regular creatures, this normalized version of creatures feels different. And I'm surprised, because if you told me just conceptually of the idea of a set where it would be like, all right, it's just like they take magic cards, but they de-magic them and just make them birds, I'd be like, it sounds like a pass for me. But when I actually look at it, it's really cool. So the Swan Song, this is the third printing. We've seen it twice before. And the origin of these swans, this spell, is Theros. All right, let us move on to the next bird on our list here, and that is Gilded Goose. Now, this one, obviously, a lot of people are going to be familiar with. It's only ever been printed on Eldraine, so this is literally the second printing of Gilded Goose, and I don't know how I feel about them including standard cards in the secret lair like this, because on one hand, it's like, this is a good opportunity for reprints. On the other hand, I see the difficulty in finding a ton of birds that are going to be worthwhile to print in this. Plus, it might also be enjoyable as somebody who plays standard to have the Gilded Goose, have this variation to play with in their standard deck. So for me, it's kind of a, you could have put something else in, but I also understand why it's here. I'm in the middle on that level. But Gilded Goose is 1 green to put out, 0/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, create a food token. Pay a green and a colorless and tap it, create a food token. And tap it, sacrifice a food, add 1 mana of any color. So this functions similarly to the Birds of Paradise that we have seen as the first card, right? It does tap for a mana the first turn. You're going to be able to do it after it comes out, but you do have to sacrifice that food. And then essentially every second turn, it's able to generate a mana of any color. But it also does create food. You know what I mean? So you can use that for life gain. So it doesn't make it a direct parallel to Birds of Paradise. And it does have 1 extra toughness, which means it can technically be used to block creatures with 1 power and survive. So there is some minor differences between it and Birds in that regard as well. Overall, I liked the Gilded Goose concept from Throne of Eldraine. You know what I mean? Like, it's got that fairy tale feel to it. I like that on this goose, we have, it's like a subtle nod to the gilding, where it's the wings at the back there. You know, it's called the Gilded Goose because this particular style of goose has these back style feathers. I don't think they're called tail feathers because they look like they're more on the side. But oh wait, no, this is the Ornithological Society. The plumage. You can see the plumage is clearly gilded. So yeah, the nod to it being the Gilded Goose are the back feathers there. And I like that. That's a very subtle sort of thing. Again, this looks like we could actually be viewing this in a similarly close area to the swan that we just witnessed. It's just a goose chilling on the water. I don't know, man. There's just something that's like relaxing about these cards. Does that make sense? Like, Magic cards tell a story, and there's usually a story of action and something important that's going on. Nothing important is going on in any of this artwork. And because it's just kind of themed this way, it works. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Baleful Strix. 1 black, 1 blue for a 1/1 artifact bird. It's got flying and death touch. When Baleful Strix enters the battlefield, draw a card. The flavor text says, some superstitious persons believe that owls, being creatures of the night, are agents of evil. But those who make such claims see only the reflection of their own guilty consciences. Just random moral advice slapped onto the cards. But what else are you going to put on something where you're showing like real world animals like this? So this is an owl with honestly a fair bit of menace to it. He looks pretty evil, for sure. I mean, you can see in the flavor text, it's like why people would think it's evil. And I don't know, man, the way that the little branches are reaching down with their spindly little pine needles, it kind of looks like claws. He's just got this whole ominous vibe to him. Admittedly, the little fluffy tufts at the top of his head do make him feel a little more silly. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're a little silly guy. And he's perched up here in his nest atop some high vantage. But man, look at those deep blue eyes. That is some menace. I enjoy that. It gives it this owl has a way darker vibe than the rest of the birds that we've seen. I mean, admittedly, if you compare it to the original art that's beside it on the screen, the original looks way, way more vicious. We've actually had 7 printings. This is the 8th printing of this particular creature. Now, the origins of the Baleful Strix aren't known for sure, but it's theorized to be Alara. And it does seem likely that these would be a creation from Alara. All right? Now, that means we've talked about 4 of the birds. Let's talk about the 5th one, and this is the weirdest one. Dovescape is the card we're talking about, and it's the weirdest one in terms of the change between the original and this one, and overall conceptually what it is, right? Because this is an enchantment. Most of the cards we've seen have actually been creatures, with the exception of the Swan Song, but the Swan Song makes that creature token. The Dovescape is some sort of nebulous enchantment that exists where it says, whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, counter that spell. That player creates X 1/1 white and blue bird creature tokens with flying, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. So it stops all non-creature spells from being cast and converts them into an equal amount of birds to the casting cost, right? A pretty crazy spell, useful to lock down the board and only allow creatures to come out. When you look over at the original artwork that we get from the Ravnica, right? That's the world that this is set on. This is an Azorius spell here. It's clear that this is some kind of crazy, like, world-enveloping spell that's channeling all kinds of magic. But with this one, it just shows some doves in the tree and a bunch of doves flying around. And I'll be real, like, this artwork for me, first of all, the background feels really weird with all the negative white space. You know what I mean? There's no definition of skyline, or there's no mountains. There's nothing in the background. So it makes the art feel unfinished. And it's like, how are all these where are all these doves coming from? Is magic being converted into like dove banging energy and they're just breeding more doves? Honestly, when you look at the artwork, if you shift the dove on top a little more to the back and behind the other dove, you literally, it's like, it makes me think, is that what the artist originally sent in? They're like, okay, it's this thing that just makes a ton of doves. And so this guy's just like, all right, you know what? I'll do it Uktabi style. Like that old, like that old orangutan from Magic, where the artwork makes it look like something questionable's happening. So yeah, that's I don't know, man. The artwork is funky, but this is the only one out of the ones we've looked at that it doesn't feel the same way that we're looking at real birds. The other ones felt like we were bird watching. This one feels like almost like we're looking at a painting of the birds. You know? So I don't know. I mean, overall. I like this as a concept. Overall, I think this is a cool idea for a secret lair. I like the exploratory nature of these. And as I said at the beginning of the video, there's a bunch more secret lairs coming out. So I'm going to be busy recording multiple secret lair videos and releasing them as we go. I don't know if I'll get them all done today because it takes a fair bit of time to do all this and edit the videos and everything. So I'm going to go and work on that. If you enjoy what I'm doing here and you want to support the channel, get on my Patreon because this channel is community funded. That's how it's supported. So if you want to help out, that's how you do it. Thanks for coming by, everybody. Big shout out to my patrons and channel members, and I will see you all very soon.